Today, we break down the Packers draft and give our official SoundsGouda grade. Let's assess how the Packers did.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of SoundsGouda. My name is Jordan Olson, and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Relf. As always, thank you for our new and returning listeners. Real quick, we just want to give a shout out to anybody who has given us a subscription on YouTube. If you haven't, please do that. We're still working on getting 500 subs. Every subscriber we have really helps out the show. We've got some goals to do some things once we hit certain sub levels. So if you could help us out, that would be amazing. And just remember that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So however you enjoy this content, we are thankful that you are listening. So I'm going to throw it over to Rob. And the Packers made some decisions on some fifth-year options. And Rob, what does that mean for the Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, this portion of Packers news is brought to you by SoundsGouda. But no, the Packers do pick up Devontae Wyatt's fifth-year option. That'll hit at $12.938 million for the cap in 2026. Kind of no shocker there. I don't think he's been a pretty good player. He took up pretty well to Hafley's new scheme. I think his biggest thing is just staying healthy because it seemed like when he would try to get some momentum, he would get injured. Happy to have that in the fold. To that note, the Packers do pass on Quay Walker's option. That was something that we were all kind of seeing what would happen. But they do probably hope to sign him to an extension. If they did end up signing him to that fifth-year contract, that would have been a $14.75 million hit in 2026. It makes more sense to probably get type of like a Dre Greenlaw contract out of him. 3 years, $10.5 million average. $13.5 million guaranteed and $31.5 million total overall were those specific numbers, and would help out the team as well. And I do believe that is a very realistic option to have happen this year. I'm not sure when those discussions will happen, but especially if he has a very good year, it'll make that obviously even easier to have those kind of conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I'm happy to have, it sounds to me like both of them are going to get taken care of and be on the team for the next 2 years. And I think that's the right move and trajectory for those players who were first round investments. And I think your analysis of the contract that the, Packers might give Quay Walker is pretty sound. They might just, to make it worth his time because they denied it, they might just take that guaranteed money that he would have gotten in that 1 year deal and kind of make that the guaranteed part of that contract. And that's probably why him and his agent feel, good about that. So today we are going to grade the Packers draft. I spent a little time kind of coming up with, I guess, our own unique grading system. If you're into draft grades, you're into draft grades. If you hate draft grades, then this probably won't be your episode. I know that they're not for everybody, but we're doing something a little bit more fair. It's not totally subjective because we have a couple points that are going to help us create a grade for each player. And then that's going to be all compiled at the end to give the Packers a total composite score for the draft. So the 3 parts that we're grading each selection on are team fit. So what are their chance to contribute in 2025 or be a big part of 2026 plans and beyond? What is their role on this roster? Do they have unique skills that they bring this team that another player potentially has? And, what are their character or leadership intangibles? So those things are all kind of factored into our team fit grade. Then we will give a position of need grade. So obviously this year, addressing wide receiver or edge, those are going to get really good grades in this draft. If we would have taken a safety early on, we probably wouldn't have given that a very good position of need grade. We also did weight that a little bit. So if they took care of that position early in the first 3 or 4 rounds, they got a very positive score there. If they took care of it late, we still gave that a positive score, but it got dinged a little bit because, if you don't take corner till the 7th round, for example, we can't really give you an A+ for that. And then considering the player's draft position according to value. So we looked at the consensus, saw where that player was drafted compared to the consensus, and gave them a weighted grade on that. So this is on a 4.0 scale. So you guys all know what that looks like, and we'll share our grades as we go along here. So, but without further ado, let's talk about some of these selections. Let's give them some grades and see how the Packers did. So get us started off with Matthew Golden, Rob.
Yeah, lucky me. I get to start off with round one, Matthew Golden, number 23. Matthew Golden from Texas. Team fit, a B plus, so a 3.3. And what can we say about that you haven't heard already? But, speed, hands, obviously is somewhat redundant in size and skills to Jaden Reed. So like we've alluded from before, but it will be interesting to see those two players on the field at the same time. Probably marks in as a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 in 2025 with wide receiver 1 potential in 2026. Obviously, him coming in and having that speed is going to just make an immediate impact without the use of Christian Watson for a while. Position need, we end up giving him an A. And then draft position value, so relative consensus, that is at an A as well, as he was projected to go around the 18th in the teens, but right around the 18th pick. So an overall composite grade, 3.7 or an A minus. So Jordan, any reflections real quick on Matthew Golden?
No, I mean, I think that he was, a great pick. And I think there's a lot of Packers fans, just from a feelings perspective, all right? Like, we drafted our first wide receiver since in the first round since, 20 or 2002. And it's like, supposed to be celebrated. So I think that there's like, honestly, some weight of people's feelings that they did this thing. We drafted a wide receiver. I think he's an excellent prospect, and he's going to be a good player in this league for a long time. Like, my floor for him is like Hollywood Brown, and I've heard a lot of Stephon Diggs comparisons. I mean, if we get a Stephon Diggs without the dude, hopefully, this is going to be a really, really good pick for us for a long time. So jumping into Anthony Belton, one of the more controversial draft picks from this class. So Anthony Belton drafted at number 54 overall in the second round. He is a offensive lineman from North Carolina State. So how does he fit into this team? I think he has a tremendous fit on this team, but, we'll be fair. This was kind of an overdraft. We'll talk about that in a second. But some things that are, I guess, kind of knocks or things to note. He is very heavy compared to the team's standards, which we've talked about a lot. We're giving Goody and the Packers credit for a little bit of a changing of the guard to try something new. But it'll be interesting to see potentially how those heavy feet, have an impact, if he is going to play tackle at the next level. So the fact that you took a second round pick and you might have to shift him into guard, that is taken into consideration. His spot on this team this year, he's probably the 7th or 8th lineman on the roster, which, I like, man, that's a kind of a weak impact for a second round pick. But he's got a chance to be our primary swing tackle because a lot of our depth is on the interior. And with Rasheed Walker going out the door, he could be a starter as soon as 2026 if he develops, right? So we gave him a team fit grade of a B minus or a 2.7 on the 4.0 scale. Position of need, give it a B plus. Offensive line wasn't like our top tier need, but certainly something that we needed to address for depth and for future purposes. So a B plus on his position of need grade, 0.7. And then draft position relative to consensus. This is the big ding. We're giving this a D plus, a 1.3 on the 4.0 scale. So he was projected by consensus to go 97th overall. There's a difference of about 40, a little more than 40 spots there. So a pretty large reach. I'll just say from my own personal perspective, I've already shared this. I think that he was like the 4th highest rated tackle on my board. I have it a little bit as less of a reach, but we're going with what consensus has here. So total composite grade of a B minus or 2.7 after you average those scores out. You got anything else to add about Belton?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying it's a reach, but Mike, I'll shout out you here though too. You're absolutely convinced that the Bears or someone else would have taken him as he had about a
Mm-hmm.
million top 30 visits. And as you
Mm-hmm.
said, he was one of your highest graded tackles. I think that was the same thing for a lot of those other teams. So whereas consensus would have been before versus after the top 30s or what they found out or some other stuff, he moved up a lot higher and it sounds like most teams boards. So
He wouldn't have made it back to pick 87, and I think that's why the Packers did what they did. So
yep, totally understand why they did it too. So, round three, number 87, a wide receiver, Savvy Williams out of TCU. Team fit, C plus, so 2.3. What can we say about him? Some pros and some cons. Needs route polish, and the one big glaring one from what we looked at too, from when we were scouting him, is drop issues. You're going to see some incredible plays from him where he makes some ridiculous catches, and then you'll turn on some film again too, or some clips of him, and he'll have it right in his breadbasket, and he just straight up drops it. So, kind of a head scratcher there. Definitely going to need to get that fixed, but more of a Y back to start. For Matt LaFleur, his new gadget toy. Where is he going to sit in? Where is he going to fit in on this wide receiver list? Probably 5 or 6 in year one. I do think that you might see a jet sweep or two, or maybe him lined up in the backfield for sure. He does have the potential to be a wide receiver 3 or 4 in 2026, depending. So, position of need, right around a B. You already drafted a wide receiver within the top 100, obviously in Matthew Golden, and then draft position value relative to consensus was a B plus or a 3.3. So projected around the 96th pick, which brings us to an overall composite grade of B minus, 2.7. Just real quick, the thing I would say on him is just he's very, very electric, and a lot of people are just calling him an athlete. Get him the ball, get the ball in his hands, no matter what way you can. And I have no doubt that Matt LaFleur is going to scheme up some pretty cool and unique things for him this year. So, pretty excited about what he'll bring.
yeah, I think Packers fans at the end of the year will definitely have a handful of plays on a highlight reel that we will celebrate. It might not be one every game, but there's going to be a few. So probably my favorite pick of the draft, Baron Sorrell, a defensive end or edge drafted in round 4, number 124 overall, out of Texas. So team fit, obviously we needed edge, so give this an A plus. This is his fit on the team, so that's 4.0 on the scale. But, his fit on the team is he's our fourth edge probably this year with the chance to take snaps from Engabari. He's probably his replacement in 2026 to be at least the third edge on this roster. And, I think by 2027, who knows what's going to happen with Rashawn Gary or LVN's development. He has the ability, I think, to work himself into, a second starting edge on this team, but probably his floor is a number 3 edge rusher, rotational guy. So position of need, we gave this an A. Obviously we were clamoring for some edge and some pass rush. So that's a 4.0. And then draft position relative to consensus. I've seen different rankings for him. I think this is a very good value, but on the consensus board that we used, he was 143rd. So we'll give this a B rating of a 3.0. So this overall composite grade for the Baron Sorrell selection is an A minus or 3.7. So
Round number 5, number 159, defensive end / linebacker, Colin Oliver out of Oklahoma State. Team fit, a B plus. So 3.3. Probably will play some off ball. We'll see. They might put him in there in certain situations to be able to be on the edge on for sure passing downs. Different body type for sure. Very unique. A little bit of a tweener. Plus pass rush skills. Probably lines up as edge 5 or 6 within our edge group, and then our linebacker group probably around linebacker 5. Position of need, C, the second edge. The second taken for us, from Sorrell, but probably does play off-ball linebacker, like we were just alluded to, and draft positional value relative consensus. D plus or 1.3. This was another one that we took a little bit higher than consensus. He was graded to go around the 208th pick, and then with a composite grade overall of a C plus.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, and there's a lot of Packers fans justifying the pick, and I love the potential of Colin Oliver. I think he's just like Savion Williams, is that there's going to be a handful of plays that he makes that we're going to say, wow, this guy's got a lot of potential. But, he only played 2 games last year. So, you know, where he was drafted, probably very appropriate to the Grady or place he would have been in if he would have been healthy the whole season compared to what he was rated consensus wise. We might even be saying that's an extreme value if he had been healthy the whole season. But the grade to consensus is what it is. So kind of another reach, round 6 pick number 198, Warren Brinson, from Georgia. So team fit, giving him a B minus, a 2.7 grade. He is a versatile defensive tackle. He can play across the line. He will compete to be the 4th or 5th DT in this room, and probably will have to do that against his former teammate Azir Stackhouse from Georgia and Colby Wooden. I personally would not mind a guy like this if he's as talented and as versatile as he is. Much bigger, pushing Colby Wooden off the roster. And then you just got Brinson and Stackhouse as DT 4 and 5. But position of need grade, we needed a defensive tackle. We did not address this until the 6th round, though. So digging it a little bit, gave it a B, a 3.0. Draft position relative to value, it's another D plus. He was rated by consensus as about the 254th best prospect, so that D plus grade that's a 1.3 on the 4.0 scale. So the composite grade for Warren Brinson is a C plus or 2.3.
Round 7, number 237, cornerback Micah Robinson out of
I think it's
Tulane.
Micah.
Micah Robinson out of Tulane. Team fit, a B minus or a 2.7. Drafted a little bit later than people wanted to draft cornerback, but we all know we can blame the Kansas City Chiefs for coming up and stealing Noel Williams from us, and for that, I'm absolutely convinced that was probably one of the higher cornerbacks for the Packers on their board. At least I hope so. Well, anyways, what can we say about him? A dime cornerback for sure. Very undersized for team standards, specifically to the Packers, but most team standards or thresholds. Does have some special teams upside, but really where he's probably going to shine here, make the most impact is as depth on your cornerback. So taking your Valentine role, cornerback 5 or quarterback 6, and or practice squad as well, depending on what happens with Kalen King or Kamal Haddon as those other kind of depth pieces as well. Position of need B, so 3.0. Obviously, like I was just alluding to, we did not address cornerback until the 7th round. And then position value relative to consensus, we didn't have one. So this one, it was an F or not applicable. Maybe was slotted to go as a UDFA, but overall, just a little bit of a reach there.
Well, we know the Packers loved him. They said they did. And they were the only team that brought him in for a top 30, and I mean, they must have really loved him because I think they definitely could have got him as a UDFA and used this draft capital for something else. But that's why you get that F grade there. And then our final selection, John Williams, offensive lineman from Cincinnati, picked in round 7 at number 250 overall. Team fit. We can always use offensive line depth, so we gave this a B overall. Excellent pass protector, that showed up on tape and in his grades. Has a little bit of work left to do in the run game, but you are really talking about a developmental piece, probably the 9th or 10th offensive lineman on this roster. So depending on how many they keep, could sneak in the back end for depth, could be on the practice squad, kind of waiting and developing until next year when we have a couple of more holes to fill. So that position need grade gave a B or a 3.0, and the draft position relative to consensus is a B minus or 2.7. He was ranked about the 279th player on the consensus board. So, in the 7th round, there's about 29 positions different. Definitely a draftable grade there. So composite grade of a B or a 3.0. And then we did throw our UDFA class in here. And Rob, you want to hit on those guys for a little bit? We'll give them a grade kind of collectively.
Yeah, so we didn't take everybody from this though, but ones we think would make the most impact or make the team. But defensive lineman, I know this is a big one. Nazir Stackhouse out of Georgia, Brinson's teammate, literally right next to him, with 246th projected pick, but 6.52 RAS score. Definitely can come in immediately and replace Slayton and those snaps if he's good enough. He does have the size, so he'd be more of your true nose tackle out of this entire draft class, which is pretty nice and definitely something we were clamoring for the Packers to take a little bit earlier. Real quick, linebacker Jamin Dumas-Johnson out of Kentucky. I really like this one. Both Jordan and I really liked his tape on when we were doing some scouting from him. But 8.98 RAS score. Played at Georgia as a 2-year starter before transferring to Kentucky, right? So there's some blue blood program in him too as well. But really like his chances. If anything, maybe some special teams as well. But offensive lineman Tyler Cooper out of Minnesota, 8.48 RAS, ranked 202 on the PFF big board, right? So got what should be some really good value there. Excellent run blocker, excels in zone and gap, and a 2-year starter at left guard. One of the biggest ones, or I guess, I don't know, I want to say controversial, but just I don't even know how, he's like the Terminator of cornerbacks, but Kazir Bugs Brown out of Florida Atlantic. He's just a really big dude. Jordan, I think he's 6'1", 220, 225, something like that. He's got size. He's got the size. I think he's got the speed as well, and has some experience playing outside corner. UDFA grade overall of an A, or 2 or 3 guys, obviously, like we were just talking about, that has a real shot to be able to make the team. I think we think that the 2 are Dumas-Johnson and Stackhouse. Stackhouse for sure for me. I'd probably give him a little bit of an edge over Dumas-Johnson, but had draftable grades, and I think that they have a decent chance to make the team. So
put my money right now on the fact that the UDFA streak will continue.
Yeah,
with 1 or 2 of these guys. I mean, Stackhouse has a real role as that run stuffing nose tackle that we don't have another guy on the roster for sure. So you add all that up, and the Packers' final grade, the SoundsGouda draft grade that we're giving the Green Bay Packers is, all right, Rob's giving a drum roll, is a B. So that all adds up to a 3.0, or if you're actually doing the math, it's like a 2.99 something, right? So it is a B grade, and we think that's fair. I don't know, we try to do a little something else with this draft grade, and not just bring our subjective feelings into it, but give some real weight on some of their value and things. Overall, not the best draft that we've had, but I think a very solid draft by Goody with a lot of guys that have different roles, So just to wrap up a couple final thoughts, I guess these are a couple of my final thoughts. The Packers had 2 really great picks in this draft in Golden and Sorrell. The Packers did a lot of reaching in this draft. You can cite the likes of Belton, Oliver, Brinson, and Robinson there. What will make this draft successful? If Belton and Williams become starters by year 3 and Golden and Sorrell are who we think or hope they are, this will be a successful draft. Savion Williams and Colin Oliver are probably the biggest boomer bust picks in this draft. Those guys either have potentials to be stars on this team or fizzle out after their first contract. There are paths for Brinson Robinson and John Williams to make this roster. I mean, year 1 for depth purposes, they will be in control of their destiny there. And we've already alluded to that the UDFAs, a couple of them have some real chances to make this team. And then I think both Rob and I both agree, we give the Packers some extra credit for finding some really good humans who should be good teammates. So just from I love good guys and good people perspective, we could give them a little bump in the score there. Yeah, why don't you close us out, Rob, and we'll get these fine folks onto whatever else they're doing today.
Well, thank you everybody for coming back and taking a listen to us. We do appreciate it. Just know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can always give us a like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. If you're listening with a friend or a family member, or another Packer fan, let them know about us. Like we were saying, we're a couple subs away from getting to 500, so we would greatly appreciate it very much. If you are listening and you have listened to us for a while, if you can go ahead and hit that sub button and turn on the notifications. If we are on the socials too as well, though, I am at SoundsGouda with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Olsen Jordan. That should be below on the banner as always. And then until next time, Packers Nation, we hope that you have a good morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Take care. Go Pack Go.
Been wanting this shit